3 horror stories in American movie theaters. Story 1. The Flickering Screen. The air in Salem, Massachusetts, on Halloween night, 1987, was a strange brew of wood smoke, damp leaves, and the cloying sweetness of cheap candy. For Emma Larson, 19 and a college freshman, it was the perfect night to be working at the Grand Majestic Theater, a historic relic with a lingering scent of dust and faded glory. The Majestic was hosting a midnight screening of The Shadow's Call, a supposedly lost 1920s silent horror film. Emma, a self-proclaimed horror aficionado, practically vibrated with excitement. Seriously, Emma, are you actually excited to spend Halloween watching some old black and white movie with a bunch of weirdos in costumes? Jake Monroe, her best friend and polar opposite, teased, leaning against the polished wood of the concession stand. At 20, Jake embodied laid-back skepticism. Ghosts and ghouls were just for laughs to him. Emma rolled her eyes, adjusting the stiff collar of her usher uniform. It's not just some old movie, Jake, it's The Shadow's Call. Rumor has it, it drove its original audience mad. Plus, it's Halloween in Salem. It's practically destiny. Earlier that morning, when the single, unmarked film canister had arrived, Emma had felt an odd chill radiating from its tarnished metal. It was unusually cold, almost icy, despite the mild autumn weather. She'd mentioned it to Mr. Hargrove, the theater's ancient, reclusive manager. He was a man steeped in the Majestic's history, having worked there for decades. His only response had been a low, guttural chuckle that seemed to vibrate through the theater's very foundations. Some films carry a certain aura. Miss Larson, his eyes, usually clouded, had held a brief, unsettling spark. Now, as the theater filled with costumed revelers, witches with pointy hats, pale-faced vampires, cackling clowns, Emma felt a different kind of chill. Not excitement, but something colder, a premonition. Yet, she pushed it aside. It was Halloween. It was supposed to be spooky. The house lights slowly dimmed, plunging the auditorium into a velvet dark hush. The heavy red curtains parted with a creak that sounded almost like a sigh. From the projection booth high above, the projector hummed to life, its steady whirring a hypnotic backdrop. A stark white title card, The Shadow's Call, flickered onto the vast screen. Gothic script stark against the deep black. The film began, a series of jerky, expressive movements and exaggerated terror, accompanied by a mournful, pre-recorded score. Emma, positioned near the back double doors, found herself completely engrossed. The film was genuinely eerie, a masterclass in atmospheric dread. But then, it happened, about halfway through, just as a character was tiptoeing down a shadowed corridor on screen. The image flickered violently, not a skip, not a jump, but a grotesque, pulsing distortion, and then, woven into the film's monochrome tapestry, shadowy figures appeared. They weren't part of the movie. They moved with an unnatural, jerky gait, like stop-motion animation, through the already unsettling scenes. They were translucent, almost like smears of darkness, yet unmistakably human in form. Emma frowned, her brow furrowing. What was that? She whispered to herself. She scanned the audience, expecting murmurs, laughter, confusion. Instead, a profound, terrifying silence had fallen. Every single audience member, from the front row to the very back, was frozen, their faces pale, their eyes wide and locked onto the screen as if hypnotized. Not a single person moved, or even blinked. Down in the front row, Jake, oblivious at first, leaned over to the person beside him, a guy dressed as a zombie, and muttered, "Wow, the special effects in the 20s were wild." Huh? He took a swig of his lukewarm soda, then casually glanced at his reflection in a nearby glass panel, part of the theater's original decor. What he saw made the blood drain from his face. His reflection was grotesquely distorted, his features stretched and elongated, his eyes hollow and black, like bottomless pits. He blinked, hard, shaking his head, but the monstrous reflection stared back, mimicking his every movement. His hand trembled, and the soda slipped, spilling with a quiet thud onto the plush carpet. His ingrained skepticism shattered, replaced by a cold, immediate fear that clawed at his throat. Emma knew, a deep, cold dread settled in her stomach. This wasn't a trick of light, a faulty reel. This was something else entirely. She had to stop it. She started to move, intending to reach the projection booth, to switch off the terrifying film. But as she took her first hesitant step, A skeletal hand, surprisingly strong, clamped onto her arm. It was Mr. Hargrove. He had materialized silently beside her. His presence chilling. His eyes, usually dull and reclusive, were now wide, gleaming with an unsettling, almost joyous light in the dimness. A faint, knowing smile played on his thin lips. "No, Emma," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp. Yet it seemed to fill the entire silent theater. "They need to watch. It's what they came for." His grip tightened, his fingernails digging into her skin. On the screen, the shadows swirled faster, becoming more defined, and then, one stepped out. It rippled, shimmered, and then solidified. A tall, gaunt figure, vaguely human, made of purest shadow. It glided silently down the aisle, its movements jerky and unnatural. The hypnotized audience members remained motionless, even as the shadow passed inches from their faces. Then, a piercing, choked scream tore through the oppressive silence. A young woman in the third row, dressed as a flapper, suddenly writhed, her face contorted in a silent shriek. The shadowy figure had reached her. It grabbed her, its inky tendrils wrapping around her torso. Her desperate cries seemed to be muffled, absorbed by the shadow, her voice dying in her throat. The figure then pulled her, effortlessly, towards the screen. For a horrifying moment, her terrified, struggling form was part of the film, her eyes wide with unspeakable terror, before she simply vanished into the swirling black and white. Panic erupted. The spell was broken. A wave of terrified screams, shouts, and desperate cries filled the theater. People scrambled over seats, tripping over each other in a desperate scramble for the exits. But the heavy, ornate double doors at the back, which had been unlatched just moments ago, were now inexplicably, impossibly locked. They rattled and vibrated under the desperate pounding of the trapped audience. But held fast. "Emma, the projector, you have to stop it." Jake's voice, raw with terror, cut through the din. He was fighting his way through the surging crowd, pushing past screaming patrons, his face chalk white, his eyes, no longer skeptical, were wide with genuine horror. Emma, ripping her arm free from Mr. Hargrove's vice-like grip, the old man simply watched the chaos with that strange, serene smile, nodded frantically. "Jake, with me." The booth. They fought against the tide of panicked bodies, dodging the increasingly bold shadowy figures that now glided freely through the aisles, plucking screaming victims at random, absorbing their cries, pulling them into the flickering, hungry screen. The film itself seemed to have accelerated, a frantic, nightmarish montage of distorted faces and abstract horror. Each time a shadow pulled someone in, the film seemed to brighten, to pulse with a malevolent energy. They burst into the projection booth, slamming the heavy wooden door shut behind them. The familiar machinery of the old projector was now bathed in an eerie, pulsing light that seemed to emanate from the lens itself. The hum was louder, more insistent, almost a visceral thrumming heartbeat. On a dusty shelf, nestled among old film canisters and forgotten lenses, was an old, leather-bound journal. Its cover was cracked, its pages yellowed with age. "What is this?" Emma gasped, grabbing it. She flipped it open, her eyes scanning the faded, spidery script. It was a projectionist's log, dating back decades. Her finger traced a specific entry, dated October 31st, 1927. The new print arrived today. From a private collector. The Shadow's Call, they called it. Said it was unique. I felt a chill just touching the canister. It seems alive. Further down, the script became more frantic, almost illegible. Something is profoundly wrong with this film. The audience, they're too quiet. And I swear, I saw things in the shadows tonight that weren't on the celluloid. They're moving in the aisles. I hear their whispers, though they make no sound. And then, a final, desperate scrawl, larger, bolder, stained as if with a tear or something worse. It was a coven. They cursed it, a ritual performed on this very celluloid, in this very booth, in 1927, a trap for souls, to feed an ancient entity. The film itself is a gateway. It takes them, it takes their life force, and it craves more. They can't leave, no one can leave. It's a hunger that will never be sated. Emma's breath hitched, a choked sound in her throat. Her blood ran cold. The truth, horrifying and undeniable, slammed into her with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just a ghost story, it was a hungry, living curse, and the film was its insatiable mouth. Outside the booth, the screams had reached a fever pitch, then abruptly dwindled. A horrifying silence fell again, broken only by the projector's thrum. The shadowy figures were pressing against the thick, wired glass of the booth door, their translucent, insubstantial forms seeming to suck the very air from the room. Their silent, gaping mouths seemed to contort in an eerie, hunger-driven grimace. "We have to smash the projector," Jake yelled, grabbing a heavy, rusted wrench from a nearby toolbox. "Destroy the film. It's the only way to stop it." Emma nodded, her mind racing, fueled by pure, primal terror and a desperate surge of adrenaline. The journal offered no solution, only a chilling explanation, but destroying the source, it was their only hope. Just as Jake swung the wrench, the booth door creaked open. Slowly, agonizingly, Mr. Hargrove stood there, his eyes wide and vacant, his face illuminated by the projector's malevolent glow. A strange, beatific smile stretched his lips, one that twisted his features into something utterly inhuman. He was no longer just the creepy manager, he was something else. Something possessed, or perhaps, something that had finally found its true purpose. "No, no, no," he whispered, his voice resonating with an unearthly power that vibrated through Emma's bones. "The show must go on," they demanded, a century of hunger. He extended a hand towards them, and a shadowy tendril, long, skeletal, and impossibly black, snaked from his palm, reaching for the spinning reel on the projector. It moved with a terrifying speed. "Emma, now," Jake roared, swinging the wrench with all his might. Emma didn't hesitate. With a guttural, primal scream of defiance, a sound torn from her very soul, she slammed the wrench into the projector's lens. Glass exploded outwards, showering the booth in glittering, dangerous shards. The metal casing buckled with a sickening crunch, sparks showering, smelling of ozone and burning circuitry. The projector groaned, wheezed, and then, with a final, desperate shudder, died. The beam of light flickered, stuttered, and then extinguished, plunging the booth into absolute darkness. A collective, unearthly scream ripped through the theater. Not human, but a chorus of anguished, dissolving voices. The shadowy figures outside the booth shrieked, their forms wavering violently, then dissolved into wisps of black smoke, consumed by the sudden absence of the light that sustained them. The chilling cold in the room lifted, replaced by the faint, stale scent of dust and fear. Then, a chilling, triumphant laughter echoed through the now silent theater. It was Mr. Hargrove's laughter, distorted, inhuman, filling the void left by the disappearing shadows. Emma and Jake watched in horror as Mr. Hargrove's form began to shimmer, to pixelate, to become translucent. His eyes still shone with that unholy bliss, fixed on the now dark screen. He took a single, slow step backward, towards the black rectangle where the screen had been, his form becoming more transparent, fading into the lingering gloom. "Enjoy the final act," his voice boomed, his last words ringing with a macabre, almost joyful glee, as he vanished into the impenetrable blackness where the screen had been, his laughter trailing off into a chilling, fading echo that seemed to become one with the theater's ancient timbers. Silence, heavy, thick, and absolute. Emma and Jake stood trembling, the stench of ozone and old dust filling their lungs. The theater was quiet now, eerily quiet. They stumbled out of the booth, their legs weak, their hearts still pounding like drums in their chests. The rows of seats below were utterly, terrifyingly empty. The exits, inexplicably, were now unlocked. They pushed through the heavy doors, gasping for breath, tumbling out into the pre-dawn Salem fog. The air was cold, damp, yet it felt like a cleansing breath after the suffocating terror within. The Grand Majestic, bathed in the eerie glow of the street lamps, seemed to sigh, its secrets once again locked within its ancient walls. Blank, blank. The next morning, news vans swarmed the Grand Majestic. The police found the theater abandoned, the projector in the booth shattered, but the cursed reel was gone. No trace of Mr. Hargrove, or any of the patrons who had vanished into the screen, was ever found. Just the empty seats, the faint scent of stale popcorn, and a chilling silence that spoke of unspeakable horrors. Emma and Jake, shaken but alive, told their story. Most dismissed it as a mass hallucination, a Halloween prank gone wrong, or the result of a bad batch of popcorn. But they knew, they had seen the shadows, they had heard the whispers, and they knew that some films, once unspooled, could never truly be rewound. The Grand Majestic might be abandoned, but the Shadow's call was still out there, waiting for its next, unsuspecting audience, and its next final act. They would never look at a movie screen the same way again. Story 2. The Empty Seat. The air in New Orleans, especially in the French Quarter on a July night, always felt like a warm, wet blanket, heavy with humidity. The scent of jasmine, stale beer, and something else, something indefinable that hinted at centuries of buried secrets. The Starlight Cinema was a testament to that history. A grand dame of a theater that had seen better days. Its once gilded facade now peeling. Its velvet seats threadbare. Tonight, July 15, 2005, it was hosting a late-night screening of a new horror blockbuster. A loud, jump-scare-laden flick that had packed the house. Behind the flickering fluorescent lights of the ticket booth, Maya Thibodeau, 25, a single mother with eyes that missed nothing and a gut feeling that rarely lied, felt an unusual prickle of unease. Her shift was dragging, and she longed to be back home with her sleeping son. Next, Maya called out, forcing a smile. A figure emerged from the shadows of the lobby, shuffling slowly towards her. It was Ms. Laveau, a Starlight regular who seemed as much a part of the theater's ancient furniture as the creaking seats. Easily 70, with a face like crumpled parchment and eyes that always seemed to hold the weight of forgotten tales. Ms. Laveau was a woman of habit. She always bought the same ticket, seat G13. Evening, dear, just the usual, Ms. Laveau rasped, her voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement, as she handed over a crumpled $5 bill. As Maya counted out the change and proffered the ticket for G13. She felt it, a sudden, profound chill that didn't belong to the humid New Orleans night. It was as if a shard of ice had just pierced her soul. Ms. Laveau's eyes, usually a cloudy gray, were unnaturally dark tonight, almost obsidian, reflecting no light, only consuming it. The old woman leaned in conspiratorially, her voice dropping to a barely audible whisper that still managed to send shivers down Maya's spine. It's waiting tonight. A faint, almost imperceptible smile, devoid of warmth, played on her thin lips before she shuffled away, her form disappearing into the theater's dimly lit lobby. Maya shivered, rubbing her arms as if to dispel the phantom chill. Okay, that's just unsettling, she muttered to herself, her cheerful facade cracking. Ms. Laveau had always been eccentric, but tonight felt different, ominous. Her shift ended moments later, and she practically leapt from the booth. Devin Carter, 27, her best friend and a charismatic bartender from a Bourbon Street jazz club, was already waiting for her, leaning against the concession stand, a large popcorn bucket in hand. His easy smile and even easier disbelief in anything supernatural were usually a comforting balm to Maya's occasional bad vibes. Hey, May, finally done with your paranormal shift? Devin teased, slinging an arm around her shoulder as they headed towards Auditorium 4. Got your super-sized popcorn and a double feature of sarcastic comments ready. You wouldn't believe what Ms. Laveau just said to me. Maya began, recounting the chilling encounter. Her eyes were so dark. Devin, and she whispered, it's waiting tonight. It just felt so wrong. Devin chuckled, pushing open the heavy theater door. Relax, May, it's Ms. Laveau. She probably thinks her cat's possessed. You know New Orleans, old houses, old ladies, old superstitions, comes with the territory. He winked, his carefree attitude a stark contrast to Maya's growing unease. Just sit back and enjoy the fake scares. They settled into their seats, a few rows behind G13. The auditorium was packed, a chaotic symphony of excited chatter, rustling popcorn bags, and the distant slurp of sodas. The house lights dimmed completely. The giant screen flickered to life with a blast of booming orchestral music. And the first screams of the horror flick erupted, pulling the audience into its fabricated terror. But Maya couldn't focus. Her eyes kept drifting, not to the grotesque scenes unfolding on screen, but to seat G13. Ms. Laveau had bought the ticket. Maya had given her the ticket. Yet, the seat was empty, completely, disturbingly empty. A cold knot tightened in Maya's stomach. Had the old woman just decided not to sit there? It seemed unlikely. Ms. Laveau was notoriously punctual, a creature of habit. A subtle change began to creep into the auditorium. It was imperceptible at first, like a slow-moving cloud. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence, like before a violent thunderstorm. Then, the temperature began to drop significantly. A clammy cold that started in Maya's extremities and spread inward, raising goosebumps on her arms and neck. She saw people in the rows around G13 start to shiver, rubbing their arms, their breath forming faint wisps in the suddenly frigid air. Then came the coughing, a nervous, sporadic sound that spread like a contagion through the audience nearest the empty seat. Murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. Is it just me, or did it get freezing in here? Man, this AC is blasting. I feel like someone's watching me. Seriously. Devin, initially dismissive, began to squirm. He pulled his sweater tighter, his teeth chattering slightly. Okay, maybe this theater's AC is on the fritz tonight, he muttered, trying to laugh it off. But his voice lacked conviction. Or maybe the movie's just so bad it's giving everyone chills. It's not the IC. Devin, Maya murmured, her voice tight, her gaze fixed on G13. Her intuition was screaming. What are you talking about? He asked, trying to catch her eye. Clearly unnerved by her intensity, he glanced over at G13, then did a double take. In his peripheral vision, he caught it. A faint, humanoid shape seemed to be occupying the empty seat. It was translucent, almost a shimmering distortion in the air. A ripple in reality, but undeniably there, its contours vaguely human. He blinked, hard, turning his head fully to look. And just like that, it was gone. Nothing but an empty, vacant seat, reflecting the horrifying images from the screen. Devin swallowed hard, his face pale. Okay, Maya, I think I need a vacation. I'm seeing things now. He tried to force a laugh, but it came out as a weak, shaky exhale. His ingrained skepticism was finally crumbling under the weight of undeniable, chilling experience. Maya knew it wasn't his imagination. Something was in that seat. As soon as the credits rolled on the blockbuster, a restless energy coursed through her. She couldn't shake the chilling emptiness of G13. The whispers, the cold, I need to check something. She told Devin, her voice tight with an urgency she rarely displayed. Meet me in Mr. Hargrove's office. Don't go anywhere. She practically ran through the still buzzing lobby, her mind a whirlwind of fear and curiosity. The Starlight Cinema was an old building, its archives a treasure trove of dusty, forgotten papers. She headed straight for the manager's office, pulling out old employee logs, property reports, and incident logs. Her fingers flew through the brittle pages, searching for the date, July 15th. And then she found it, a theater incident report from July 15th. 1975, exactly 30 years ago to the day. The date hit her with the force of a physical blow, a sense of grim destiny. The report detailed the death of a woman, Martha Jenkins, in seat G13 during a late-night horror film screening. The official ruling was a heart attack, but underneath, scrawled in an old manager's hurried, almost frantic hand, were faint, almost erased notes. Audience claimed she looked terrified. Screamed but no sound, eyes fixed on screen, then vacant, rumors of unnatural circumstances. A chill in the air, like the life drained out of her. Maya's breath hitched. She kept digging, pulling up subsequent years' logs. And there it was, a horrifying pattern, almost every year. On July 15th, an unusual incident was recorded in Section G, patron reporting severe chills in Section G, complaints of feeling watched. Audience member complained of feeling drained after sitting near G13. Left ill, and most disturbingly, single report of a missing person after the late show. Section G unsubstantiated, but a thorough search yielded no results. It wasn't a death every year, but always someone sitting near G13 would disappear, or report a profound sense of terror and unease, a feeling of being consumed. Maya's blood ran cold, turning to ice in her veins. This wasn't a heart attack. This was a cycle, a hungry presence tied to that seat, feeding on fear, on life itself, and Ms. Laveau's cryptic words echoed in her mind, chilling her to the bone. It's waiting tonight. She raced back to the auditorium, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The film was reaching its screaming climax, the screen filled with gruesome close-ups and frenetic, blood-soaked action. The cold in the theater was now palpable. The air thick with a cloying scent like old grave dirt, almost metallic. Devin was squirming in his seat, visibly uncomfortable, his eyes darting frantically towards G13, his face a mask of dawning horror. Maya, I don't like this. I feel like my skin is crawling. It's like something's breathing down my neck. As he spoke, the shape in G13 began to solidify. It started as a ripple in the air, a disturbance of light and shadow. then coalesced into a distinct, gaunt figure. It was impossibly tall and thin, its form made of stretched shadows, like a nightmare pulled into reality. Its head was cocked at an unnatural angle, and its hands ended in long, skeletal, claw-like digits. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, were empty, consuming voids that seemed to suck all light and hope into their depths. It was the epitome of absolute, hungry emptiness. "Devon, look out," Maya screamed, pointing a trembling finger, her voice raw with terror. The figure in G13 seemed to sense their awareness. It didn't glide, it lunged. With impossible, sickening speed, it launched itself from the empty seat, directly at Devon. Its claw-like hands reached for his throat, its form shimmering with a terrifying, ethereal hunger. A silent scream tore through Maya's mind, a primal instinct taking over. Without thinking, Maya reacted. She grabbed Devon's arm, pulling him back with all her might, yanking him out of the path of the spectral attack. At the same time, a phrase, a rhythmic chant her grandmother, a Louisiana voodoo practitioner, had taught her years ago as a child, burst from her lips, an involuntary, desperate plea. "Elwam apple, potage mwen, l'esprit sa qui mal, ale, spirits, I call you, protect me, evil spirit, be gone." It was a protection prayer, a powerful plea for warding, whispered to her as a child during fever dreams. As the words left her mouth, a sudden, piercing, unearthly shriek tore through the theater, echoing from the very walls. A sound of pure, unadulterated agony and rage. The gaunt figure recoiled as if struck by an invisible, blazing force. Its shadowy form wavered violently, contorted in what looked like extreme pain. And then, with a final, desperate, fading cry, it vanished, dissipating into nothingness, leaving only a lingering, acrid scent in the air. The oppressive cold lifted, the air seemed to clear, and the normal hum of the projector returned, as if nothing had happened. The theater was silent again, save for the movie playing on. Oblivious to the terror it had just witnessed, Devon was gasping for breath, clutching his chest, his eyes wide with a terror that would haunt him for years. What the hell was that? "Maya," he choked out, his voice hoarse. Maya, still trembling, looked at the now truly empty seat G13, the space where the figure had been felt clean, devoid of its oppressive presence. Then, her gaze drifted to the back row, to a seat previously unnoticed in the gloom. Ms. Laveau was sitting there, calm as ever, her ancient eyes fixed on the screen, a faint, almost imperceptible, satisfied smile on her lips. She met Maya's gaze across the silent theater, her dark eyes holding an unreadable depth that seemed to understand everything. Then, without a word, she rose and quietly slipped out of the theater, her shuffle fading into the distant sounds of Bourbon Street. Blank, blank. The next day, a somber announcement went out from Starlight Cinema Management. Seat G13 would be permanently removed from the auditorium due to structural damage and unforeseen maintenance issues. No further explanation was given. No questions answered. Maya quit that same week. She told Devon it was because she found a better job with better hours, closer to her son's daycare. But the truth was, she couldn't shake the feeling. Every empty seat in every room, every dark corner, seemed to hold a sliver of that gaunt, hungry presence. She'd broken the cycle, for now. But in New Orleans, some spirits never truly rest. Some ancient hungers are never truly sated. And some empty seats remain forever watched, waiting for their next victim. Story 3. The Last Showing. The air inside the Horizon Multiplex in Boise, Idaho, on December 24, 2024, felt less like Christmas Eve and more like a tomb. Dust motes danced in the sparse light filtering through the grimy lobby windows, illuminating the peeling paint and the "For Sale" sign taped crookedly to the ticket booth. This was it. The Horizon, a once bustling hub of cinematic dreams, was closing after tonight. A final, desperate showing of a low-budget horror flick. The Hollow Night was its swan song. Liam Foster, 17, a high school senior and the theater's last remaining projectionist, felt a bittersweet ache in his chest. This was his last shift before college, and the silence of the empty multiplex was deafening. "Well, this is a festive farewell. Huh, Sophia?" he muttered, fiddling with a loose wire on the popcorn machine. Sophia Alvarez, 16, Liam's coworker and best friend, was meticulously cleaning a display case filled with stale candy. She was obsessed with urban legends and local lore, a trait that usually amused Liam. But tonight, it felt a little too real. At least we get to watch a horror movie for free. And who knows, maybe the ghost of the vanished projectionist will make a cameo. She grinned, but her eyes held a spark of genuine curiosity. The Horizon had a grim reputation. Back in the 1990s, a projectionist named Thomas Miller had simply vanished during a late-night shift. No trace, no explanation, and for years, patrons had sworn they heard whispers in Theater 7. A low, murmuring hum that wasn't part of any movie soundtrack. Liam and Sophia were the only staff on duty, preparing for what they expected to be a small crowd of locals seeking cheap holiday entertainment. Or perhaps just a quiet place to escape Christmas cheer. As the doors opened, a handful of people trickled in, a couple of teenagers, a lone man in a trench coat, an elderly woman wrapped in a shawl. It was a bizarre assembly for Christmas Eve. Liam headed up to the projection booth, his sanctuary, to start the hollow night. He threaded the film, hit the switch, and watched the familiar images flicker onto the screen in Theater 7. Downstairs, Sophia took her position, occasionally glancing at the sparse audience. Everything seemed normal, if a little too quiet. But a few minutes into the film, Liam noticed something odd. The projector, usually a consistent workhorse, was behaving erratically. The film on screen seemed to speed up, then slow down, then jump forward several frames, all without any input from him. He checked the controls, adjusted the settings, but nothing seemed to affect it. It was as if the projector had a mind of its own. "Liam, are you messing with the speed?" Sophia's voice crackled through his headset, a hint of confusion in her tone. "No, I swear, it's doing it on its own. Is everything okay down there?" Define, okay," Sophia replied, her voice dropping. "There's a guy here, a man in a tattered coat, sitting alone in the back row. G13. Liam frowned. G13? But there's no one assigned to G13. We only sold tickets up to row F for that showing." "Exactly," Sophia whispered, "and he wasn't here when I first checked." Her voice was tense. "I'm going to go check his ticket." Liam watched the screen, a weird chill creeping up his spine. The jerky movements of the film now felt less like a glitch and more like intentional. A minute later, Sophia's voice came back, strained. "He's gone, Liam. I walked all the way back there. And he just vanished." "But the seat, G13, it's ice cold." Just as Sophia spoke, the movie's audio began to warp. The dramatic soundtrack of The Hollow Night dissolved into a low, guttural static, then a whisper, growing louder, more distinct. It wasn't dialogue from the film. It was a single, resonant voice, chanting names. Thomas Miller, the voice rasped. Deep and ancient. Sarah Jenkins, David Chen. The names were unfamiliar to Liam, but they resonated with a chilling familiarity to the theater. He heard Sophia gasp through the headset. "Liam, those are employees who used to work here." Thomas Miller was the missing projectionist. Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. He yanked the headset off. The sound of the chanting voice too close, too real. He looked around the cramped projection booth, his eyes darting frantically. His gaze fell upon a dusty, forgotten corner, behind a stack of old movie posters. There, half hidden, was an old, unmarked film canister. It was dark, tarnished metal, with a single, crudely scrawled label, Theater 7. A strange compulsion seized him. This wasn't the current movie. It felt older, colder. This had to be connected. He knew he shouldn't, but the chilling intrigue, the desire to understand, was overwhelming. He carefully unspooled the first few feet. The film itself was ancient, brittle, with the distinctive scent of decay. He quickly threaded the unlabeled film onto the secondary projector, a much older model kept for emergencies. He switched it on, the whirring of the old machine joining the ghostly chanting from the main film. The screen flickered, showing grainy footage of the Horizon multiplex itself. But it wasn't how it looked now. It was from decades ago. The lobby was bustling, vibrant, alive, and the patrons. Liam gasped. His blood ran cold. The images shifted to the audience inside a packed Theater 7. He saw faces, recognizable faces, of people who were sitting in the audience tonight. The elderly woman in the shawl, the lone man in the trench coat, even a couple of the teenagers he'd just sold tickets to. They looked exactly the same. Not a day older. They were smiling, laughing, oblivious. The footage cut back to the lobby, then the aisles, and then, There he was, the man in the tattered coat, standing in the back row of the archival footage, the exact spot Sophia had mentioned. He turned slowly, his face obscured by shadow. But his hand, he was pointing directly at Liam through the projector's lens. A skeletal finger emerging from the darkness. At that exact moment, a blood-curdling scream tore through the headset. Liam, he's here, in the booth. It was Sophia, her voice choked with terror. Liam whirled around, his heart leaping into his throat. Standing in the doorway of the projection booth, a towering, gaunt presence, was the man in the tattered coat. His face was no longer obscured, it was a decaying mask. Skin stretched tight over bone, eyes like hollow pits of endless night. The air in the tiny booth became instantly frigid, stealing his breath. He followed me, Sophia shrieked, scrambling backward, tripping over a stack of old reels. He's not a ghost, Liam, he's from the film. The entity took a slow, deliberate step into the booth, its head cocked, its hollow eyes fixed on the archaic Theater 7 inches reel spinning on the secondary projector. A low, guttural growl emanated from its decaying throat. Liam's mind raced, adrenaline flooding his veins. The film, it was a trap, a portal, it was feeding something. The film, we have to destroy the film, he yelled, grabbing the old, metal canister labeled Theater 7 inches from the projector. His hands burned, as if touching dry ice. How? Sophia cried, scrambling to her feet, her eyes wide with terror. Outside, fire, anything, Liam yelled, shoving the canister into her hands. Shut off the main projector. He lunged for the controls of the main projector, slamming the off switch with desperate force. The terrifying chanting from the hollow night instantly cut out, replaced by the chilling silence of the ghost in the booth. Sophia, trembling, managed to slam the off switch for the secondary projector. And the ghostly images on the screen below vanished into darkness. The entity let out a frustrated, guttural hiss. It lunged at them, its clawed hands reaching. Run, Liam screamed, grabbing Sophia's arm. They burst out of the booth, down the emergency stairs, and into the dark, empty lobby. The entire theater was plunged into sudden darkness, the main movie having cut out, the emergency lights flickering faintly. They tore through the lobby, pushing open the heavy glass doors that led to the parking lot. The cold Christmas Eve air hit them, crisp and clean. The reel, give it to me, Liam yelled, grabbing the Theater 7 inches canister from Sophia. He scanned the parking lot. An old, rusted dumpster sat near the back, its lid overflowing with cardboard and discarded food wrappers. He opened the lid, then fumbled in his pocket for his lighter. What are you doing? Sophia cried, her teeth chattering from fear and the sudden cold. Burning it, it's the only way. He flicked the lighter. A small flame sputtered to life. He dropped the ancient reel into the dumpster, then pushed the lighter into the mass of cardboard. The old, volatile film instantly caught fire, igniting the cardboard with a whoosh. A column of black, acrid smoke billowed into the night sky, carrying with it a faint, desperate shriek that seemed to tear at the fabric of reality. As the dumpster fire blazed, the entire Horizon multiplex went completely dark, not a single emergency light illuminating its grim facade. Then, from inside, they heard the sounds of shattering glass, splintering wood, and an unearthly roar that seemed to shake the very ground beneath them. The small audience, who had been caught unaware by the sudden blackout and the eerie silence from the movie, now streamed out of the theater, bewildered and frightened by the sounds of destruction. They hurried to their cars, clearly spooked, speeding away into the night without a backward glance. Liam and Sophia stood panting, watching the blaze consume the cursed film, the acrid smoke stinging their eyes. A car pulled up beside them, the window rolling down. It was Mr. Callahan, the theater owner, his face pale and drawn, his eyes wide with a fear Liam had never seen. Liam, Sophia, what in God's name happened? He demanded, his voice trembling. He looked from the burning dumpster to the now dark, silent, and clearly damaged theater. Liam, still shaking, could only point at the dumpster fire. That film, the one labeled Theater 7. It was cursed. Mr. Callahan, it brought something here. Mr. Callahan stared at the flames, a look of dawning horror on his face. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, his eyes darting to the black maw of the theater. Theater 7, that canister, he whispered, his voice barely audible. He swallowed hard, then confessed, his words tumbling out in a desperate rush. I found it years ago. Tucked away in a secret compartment in the old projectionist's desk. Didn't know what it was. Thought it was just old home movies. The original owner, he used to play it on slow nights. Said it gave the place atmosphere. I started playing it myself. A few times a year. Just for background during quiet showings. Hoping it would boost business. Didn't know it was summoning something. God forgive me, I thought it was just a novelty. He looked utterly devastated, his dream of saving the theater crumbling into dust. Replaced by a chilling realization of what he had unwittingly unleashed. Weeks later, the Horizon multiplex wasn't just closed, it was demolished. Reduced to rubble and concrete dust. The official story was irreparable structural damage due to an electrical fire. But Liam and Sophia knew the truth was far more sinister. Liam went off to college, and Sophia got a new job. But the incident at the Horizon never truly left them. Sometimes, late at night, Liam would receive an anonymous text message. It was always a photo. Grainy and unsettling. A photo of him, or Sophia, sitting in the audience of Theater 7. Clearly taken from the back row. And in the very back, just barely visible in the shadows, a faint, gaunt figure, the man in the tattered coat. The cursed reel was gone. The theater destroyed, but Liam knew, with a bone-chilling certainty, that some shows, once started, never truly end, and somewhere, the man in the tattered coat was still watching. If you find the story interesting, please like and share this video and leave a comment with your opinion. Don't forget to subscribe to Sweet Revenge and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos.